to my brother Ryan McMahon about a book he's been working on for the last 2 years, The Sun King, and would like to just dive in and find out a little bit about what inspired the book and what's it all about. So, yeah, Ryan, can you please tell us about the book, maybe what inspired it, and give us a little summary of the book?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Ian. I'm excited about this book. I'm excited about this project, and the inspiration behind it is multifold. There's just a lot of different things that inspired it. I just started doing research on the internet as well as just being an avid reader, and I've always been inclined for the metaphysical or the spiritual stuff, and I just realized that YouTube is sort of like YouTube and the internet is sort of like this sort of collective consciousness or this akashic record that we have access to. And I just started seeing all these things from all these different languages and all these different source texts that are really saying the same thing. And so my point is that it inspired me to write a book about unity consciousness.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, you've been doing this for a couple years, and you're about to release the book. You did send out a teaser, which was fascinating and very interesting. Just I haven't read much of the book at all, but that teaser really got me thinking. And one of the first questions I had was, you mentioned still causal light. That term is new to me, and so I just wanted to know, basically, what is still causal light, especially the word causal? What does that mean?
That's a great question. It's tough because the language that we use in the esoteric circles, like still causal light or even still magnetic light, most people, that kind of terminology is foreign to them. And that's actually what this book is doing, is it's bringing some concepts of the right brain and of what we call like the center self, the stillness within you. And it's bringing these concepts into language. And these concepts have been in language already for thousands of years, but they've sort of fallen out of the Western mind because we're so, technologically oriented and materially oriented and sort of reductionist oriented. So to answer your question, causal still light, the best way to think about it for the listeners out there is that if you look into space, we're so fixated on studying the lights we see, like the stars and the suns and the novas, and what we're missing is that what we really should be studying is all the space in between them. And that's actually the power source and the sustaining, renewing source of all those lights and stars. And so the causal still light is actually the cause that links all things in the universe together. And when I say all things, I would say through consciousness. And so the linking is done in the material world, like the three-dimensional world, like actually seeing a star or a planet, but it's also done on the more subtle dimensions, the energy out there. Like it's done on your emotional body, it's done in your mental body. Just to quote the Eastern, a lot of the Eastern Taoistic view is that the universe is universal living mind. So that's a mental body that's connected through this causal still light. And then the key word there is cause. What we're studying in this book that I wrote is what is the cause of reality, consciousness, and then how we become aware of it.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's heavy and deep and needs to be explored. Excellent, thank you. What about another thing that came to me through just the book teaser was the ancient practice of sun worship, and maybe how people really used to worship the sun, but yet you kind of allude to maybe there's more to worship, like what's behind the sun. Can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, that's actually another really good question. Solar worship, as well as planetary worship, sun moon worship, is very ancient. The reason being is that mankind realized at some point that the power source of our own reality, our own consciousness, really stems back to the sun, because the sun powers the planet, um, keeps it going in a harmonic. It's connected to the planet via light waves, which are electrical light waves, and they sustain the mineral kingdoms, they sustain the animal kingdoms, and of course they sustain the human kingdoms. And so the human being has always recognized the sun as its primary source for life. And in my book, I go deeply into certain religious traditions, both East and West, and I show that when you understand the mysticism of these religions, and you could say the esoteric teachings of these religions, every single one of them, and this is a true statement, every single one of them goes back to natural events, worshiping the sun, for example, as a god or a goddess. You know, the moon would be the feminine counterpart, but even the earth is termed, Mother Earth or Grandmother Earth, because she does have a feminine energetic quality, and the sun is typically male because he has an electric masculine quality.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's obvious why people would worship the sun. It provides all of life. Without it,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that it even provides, to a great deal, your or our level of consciousness. So what I mean by that is your chemistry is regulated by your endocrine system, and sunlight, as well as moonlight, which is reflected sunlight, affects your consciousness. And this is basically why chemically we tend to get sleepy when it gets dark. It's because our chemistry is changing. Our endocrine system is responding to the changes in light, and that's actually changing our level of consciousness, and we fall into a subconscious state.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I can totally see that. All right, and then one other thing that kind of jumped out at me was an interesting statement: the difference between knowing and knowledge, and knowing being more of a feeling thing, and knowledge being a thinking thing. And I just want to know if you could expand on that, and maybe even provide maybe one of the first or an example that's happened to you where you realized the difference between knowing something and just knowledge.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so in simple terms, in one of the chapters that I wrote, it's probably both in two chapters: the character of reality, and it's also, I know I touched on it in the chapter called the edge of self. And what I talk about there, the difference between knowing and knowledge, is that knowing is not, one of the key points is that we don't really gain knowledge by thinking. And so in our Western terms, a lot of people have always tried to locate the mind or the mental capacity in the human brain. But I would say that it's not located in the brain. It's actually located in the entire organism. The whole human body is the temple that houses consciousness. And through consciousness we come to knowing. And it is a process where we use thinking, but we don't use the brain to think. The brain is basically a crystalline processor. It's sort of like the piece of quartz in a radio. I don't know if people know that still today when you listen to a radio, there's a little quartz crystal in there that actually resonates. And
No, I didn't know that.
yeah, it's like the sound waves hit that. They actually go into that crystal, that quartz crystal, and that quartz crystal transforms the wavelength into a wavelength that's coherent to our ears, so we can hear all the words and sounds and all the instruments. And our brain does the same thing. So consciousness, what my point is that consciousness doesn't reside in the brain. Consciousness resides through the entire human body, and you could say the whole cerebrospinal system, the entire nervous system. So the way in which I talk about this in the book and in the chapter, The Edge of Self, is that the brain is just an interface between the body and universal consciousness or knowing. And so when you realize this, you start to think differently about yourself, about your the bodily temple, and then you start to change your awareness or shift your awareness away from this idea that all consciousness resides in the brain, and you start to feel information as well as ascertain it by thinking through it. And this is the whole point, is feeling is just as important as thinking. It's sort of like the emotions of your being are just as important as your intellect. So there's no real point in measuring someone's IQ, their intellectual quotient, without measuring their EQ, their emotional quotient, because they go together. And then, in very simple terms, it's the heart and the mind, or the heart and the brain, the head and the heart. You might hear this in older traditions that always say, a balanced person is united head and heart. And when your head and your heart are in balance, then your hands, which are really the tools that define man from the animal kingdom, is our opposable thumbs in our hands. Like, mankind can build, nanocomputers, and we can also build pyramids, whereas, the animal kingdom doesn't quite have that ability. So, to bring this all full circle, is when your head and your heart are in equilibrium or balance, then what you do with your hands is going to be a representation, a creative representation of balance and harmony. And so when it comes to knowing and knowledge is something that you would store in your memory, which is an intellectual pursuit, and all it is a recording of things that you've experienced. It's actually not organized. It's simply a recording. Like, you could literally hit playback, and listen to your memory or rethink your memory. But knowing is taking that playback, taking that memory, and applying it to the cosmos at large, or you could say to nature, and seeing how it reflects in nature, and go, oh, okay, does this kind of playback make sense? Is it rational, logical? Is it emotionally balanced? Is it mentally balanced? Physically balanced? So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was great. And then I guess one of the last things I'll ask you would be, I know you've studied a lot about Hermetic principles and Hermes, and I would like you to touch on maybe what inspired you, and maybe a little information about Hermetic principles, Hermes, and the whole idea of maybe syncretism, how everything can be linked.
Yeah, that's another key point. I guess I should have prefaced this and said that to a great deal I am a Hermeticist. I don't pigeonhole myself to any particular way or path as being the only way to reach higher states of consciousness or higher states of awareness. But I will say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, in the Western world, and you could say in the religious sense, the Abrahamic religions, but even back before that into ancient Egypt, there are these principles. There's 7 Hermetic principles, and I won't go through them all, but they're all in my book. And what you'll find is the most balanced human beings and the greatest minds that I've studied throughout the Western world have this one thing that's weird that's in common, is that they're all Hermeticists. And if you read them, they'll tell you this. If you read Schwaller de Lubic's, if you read Giordano Bruno, if you read more modern people like Michael Tessarian, even Freud and Carl Jung pay tribute to Hermetic principles in the psychological sense. So the point is that the Hermetic principles are not really a philosophy that are just some idea in someone's head. They are actually scientifically provable principles that exist in nature. And when you base your approach to reality off of nature, which is our greatest teacher, you get consistency, and you also get the potential to truly see deeply into reality. And our current, sort of scientific and psychological approach to reality right now that is non-hermetic in America and in the Western world, it's really way off center. And so in my book, I really highlight hermetic principles because once you study them and you understand them, you can apply them to anything in your life because they actually exist in nature. And so the most common one, and people have probably heard of this principle, is the statement, as above, so below.
Yeah.
It's also termed as without, so within. And really what this means is that everything in the cosmos, no matter what form it's in, whether it's a three-dimensional form, a four-dimensional form, a two-dimensional form, a one-dimensional form, whether you can see it or not, whether you can measure it or not, all things in the cosmos are linked through a process called mediumship, which is basically all things are nestled within all other things. And so when you really truly see this in many different avenues of your life, you start to realize your own interconnectedness to the nature around you, to the people around you, and then to higher consciousness, or God, if you want to call it that. And it's an incredibly balanced approach to living. And I just personally think that all things in nature are constantly seeking equilibrium, rest, or balance. Those three terms really mean the same thing: equilibrium, rest, and balance. So as a human being, I seek those things too. That sort of Zen middle path, that metaphysics, that middle physics, where balance actually resides. And so yeah, that's one of the main Hermetic principles.
Excellent. And then you just want to touch on syncretism, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, that'd be great. Syncretism is the process of becoming aware of how unity consciousness pervades all systems. And so all these systems we see are man-made or man-influenced, and many people get divided or separated by their beliefs. And syncretism is a deep way of unfolding the mind and showing how all these beliefs and belief systems are actually the same. They're just different languages of saying the same thing, or the same thing in different cultural dress. And so syncretism is basically syncing or linking all these different systems together and showing how they're really unified as one.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, that's excellent. I mean, I know there's a lot more to discuss, in the book, but I think this is a definite good summary to give people an idea of what they might be able to dive into.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on and interviewing me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to share this information with any truth seeker or anybody who's just looking to know themselves in a more coherent way.
Yeah, and The Sun King by Mrryan McMahon should be available spring 2016, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's going to come out first on Amazon and also on Amazon's sister company called CreateSpace.com.
Mm-hmm.
But it will be available in all the major outlets like Barnes & Noble and the standard large bookstores. But probably Amazon or CreateSpace is going to be the most direct way to get it.
Excellent. And then do you have a website people can look up more information?
Yeah, my website right now is in the process of being unfolded, so people could go see it. It's a little hard to find, but it's just my name. It's Ryan dot McMahon, which is McMahon .weebly.com. Actually, let me say that again. It's actually Ryan-McMahon.weebly.com. And there's some information there too. You can definitely find stuff on the book, and also on my previous book, which has been out for quite a few years, called Tide and the Cranog. And then the other real good place to find out about this book and the stuff that I study, and also my influences. I have a huge book list of great minds that I've studied is just my YouTube channel. I have over 82 videos on there right now, and that YouTube channel is just Mr. Ryan McMahon, and that's all one word. And you can either Google that, or you can just go straight to YouTube and type in Mr. Ryan McMahon, and it'll come up.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to put out this beautiful information and share it with the world in your unique way. So continue. Good luck, brother.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ian. Great talking to you. Appreciate it.
Oh, and happy birthday.
Thanks, man. Today is my birthday. Thank you very much.
Peace, love, and hair grease.
All right. Cheers.